Introducing you to people across North Carolina and around the world who put their Catholic faith into action. This is FaithWorks on Catholic 540 AM Divine Mercy Radio. Now, here's your host for FaithWorks, Ellen White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. Our show highlights individuals through God's grace who put their faith into action daily. Amazing people who have an interesting, sometimes overlooked impact on our Catholic faith. On FaithWorks, we share their stories. I am your host, Ellen White. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Jim Roach, whose journey of faith and service offers encouragement, inspiration, and a reminder of how God works through ordinary people in extraordinary ways. Whether you're facing challenges or just looking for a boost of hope, this conversation is sure to speak to your heart. So let's dive in. Welcome to Divine Mercy Radio Studios, Jim.
Hi, thank you, Ellen. Oh, why me? I'm just an ordinary guy, but yeah, we all have a story to tell.
We do, for sure. Okay, so Jim, can you begin by sharing a bit about your upbringing? What was your experience like growing up in the Catholic faith?
Well, our family wasn't Catholic to begin with. My mother came from a Russian Orthodox background, but didn't practice, didn't go to church. And my father probably was baptized Catholic. I never ever asked him that. But he didn't practice his faith. He lived in an orphanage because my grandmother couldn't take care of so many children. Mm-hmm. And so she, in those days, my father was born in 1905. So in those days, it was hard to raise a family and work at the same time. So many families were raised in orphanages throughout, in our case, in New York State. So I
wonder, Jim, was it unique to New York State during that time for orphanages to be raising children of large families, or
well, where the immigrants went, which was New York and Philadelphia, Chicago.
Okay,
these are the places, and of course, New York being probably the biggest port for immigrants coming from Europe, and my family background is. My mother, Russian and Polish. My father, Irish and German. My mother's family were coal miners in western Pennsylvania, southwest of Pittsburgh. And my mother came to New York City to work. Only went through the third grade in school. Helped raise the other children. My grandmother and grandfather had 12 children. And my mother helped raise them. My father, Irish and German, his father came from the city of Cork and was kind of not a desirable person. They had probably, I think, 7 or 8 children. I can't remember. Some of them died early.
Okay.
They went to the orphanage because my grandmother worked for the Roosevelts in New Hyde Park. And she was a cook, and my grandfather took care of horses and carriages because that's what the Irish did. Mm-hmm. And the Roosevelts were Dutch, and so so that's how it went. So there wasn't much religion in our family until we started to go to school. We went. I have a sister a year younger. I was born in 1935. During the Depression, and went to public schools to start with, and then after a couple of years went to Catholic school. My father converted in the late 40s to Catholicism, and that really took off. That was a big factor in my life, and even more so for my sister. By the way, my sister is still alive, and so we grew up in New York City. Mm-hmm. the greatest city in the world and the greatest country in the world at the greatest time in the world. We just won the Second World War.
Now tell me, Jim, you said in his late 40s, your dad
No, in 1940.
Oh, in 1940.
1940s, yeah.
Okay, so how old was he at that time? Do you remember?
Well, let's see, he was born in 05, so he was 35.
Okay.
He was about 45 when he converted.
Okay, so mid-40s.
Yeah.
And what specific impact did that have on your family, especially you said?
Well, immediately we went to Catholic schools.
Okay.
And there was a famous priest in our parish, Father Kelly, who, by the way, wrote a couple books about Vatican II, in favor of Vatican II.
Okay.
Very positive. But Father Kelly was like the cop in the neighborhood. He walked around the neighborhood, got after us kids, and played ball with us in the street.
Oh, a real father figure.
Really, yeah, he was quite the guy. In New York City back in the 30s and 40s, the streets were, we had, I found out later, roughly 3,000 people living on each block. I mean, it was like a town.
Wow.
So the local policeman, he walked the beat. He didn't ride in the car. He walked the beat up and down the street, and Father Kelly and other ministers walked the street. And they were the ones who sort of kept us on the straight and narrow. And
kept the order. Was Father Kelly one of the individuals that had a tremendous impact on your faith at that time?
Well, my father's faith he did. My father was very impressed with him, and Father Kelly was probably the reason my father converted, came to the truth, and Father Kelly was like Jimmy Cagney. Jimmy Cagney was a movie star from our neighborhood. He became quite famous as a movie star, a tough guy. Father Kelly was a tough guy.
Okay.
You wouldn't want to put up your fist with him. He looked like he could handle himself.
So you went to Catholic schools, and I wonder, you said Father Kelly had an impact on your father, not so much on you, but obviously through your father he did.
Yeah.
Were there any particular people at this time who shaped your faith in these early years?
Well, again, my sister and I, we did our school, and again, Father Kelly was around. They didn't transfer priests that frequently, so he was probably the priest at St. Monica's school and church for probably, I would say, 20 years or so, 25 years.
Right.
But even when I knew him later on in life, when I became older and he was still around, he finally did leave and sort of retired. But he still, they were short of priests, so he still had a parish somewhere. And it was over in Times Square, in fact, for him.
Okay.
So here I am living in New York City. I knew the faith, but wasn't overwhelmed by it. Lived the best I could. We had a good life. The war ended. Things were so enormously great at that time. I mean, geez, we won the war. There was block parties. There were people coming home from the war.
A real sense of patriotism.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. So again, but here's what happened. This is how the war brought about a lot of new items in everybody's life. One of them was the TV.
Yeah.
So television comes. We play in the street. We spend almost all our time outdoors. So anyway, long story short, Billy Graham comes on TV. Oh, he was so wonderful. And my father, having been converted, couldn't get enough religion. So we listened to Billy Graham. Bishop Sheen came on TV. Oh, that was even better. Oh, Bishop Sheen. So religion sort of got into the mainstream of most people. Mm-hmm. They were on TV. In fact, Bishop Sheen had a program that outdid the most famous TV character was Milton Berle, comedian, Jewish guy.
Right.
Bishop Sheen was voted the outstanding program one year, beating Milton Berle. Mm-hmm. Milton said, "How come?" And Bishop said, "Well, listen, you have one or two good Jewish writers. I had 4 good Jewish writers."
In the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Right.
That's fantastic. I've never heard that.
I had 4 and you have 2. So.
Yes, we replay Archbishop Sheen's recordings, and they are so timeless. There are so many incredible messages, and how amazing that God used Archbishop Sheen, or Bishop Sheen at the time, to do this production, and through this medium of television that was so brand new. I mean, it's just like I was telling you about radio when you came in. We have this wonderful quote from Pope John Paul the Great in a picture at our studio where he talks about how it's such an incredible medium to reach people. They're a captive audience in their car and they can't escape it, and they end up thinking about the little seeds that are planted. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, look at Bishop Barron today.
Exactly.
He's my hero.
Yeah.
He's my guy. I can't get enough of him. I listen every time I can, and he always has something new every week. And he quotes Bishop Sheen a lot.
Yes, he does.
He does bring him up. So Bishop Sheen has had a revival thanks to Bishop Barron. Okay,
so I want to go back during your early years, and then we'll transition to marriage, family, and what you consider some wake-up calls for you. Did you have an early sense of a vocation or a calling back then when you were growing up in New York?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
No, not really.
Not even with listening to Bishop Sheen, huh?
Yes, in a way.
Okay.
In a way, I did. I remember going to high school. I went to a Catholic high school, Power Memorial, famous because it had the basketball superstar of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was called Lou Alcindor at the time. I used to go to, they had a holy hour at Blessed Sacrament High School nearby in Manhattan. And I went there and listened to speakers and said prayers. I wasn't lost to the world yet then. But at that time, my father's influence and my Catholic school work, and of course I found girls interesting then because I was 14, 15, 16. And that Blessed Sacrament was an all-girls school. By the way, in New York City, almost all the schools were either all male or all female. There was only a few schools that were mixed.
Okay.
So anyway, I would go to Blessed Sacrament, and I did have feelings at that time, listening to the speakers and doing prayers and so forth, and receiving Holy Communion. The thought came to me, geez, this is not a bad job. Father Kelly, it was a good influence on me. Not a bad life, but something I probably should consider. Thought about it. But you know what? The girls came. There were too many pretty girls.
Too many pretty girls.
And
go ahead.
And here I am, up until high school. Sports was my whole life.
Okay.
I mean, I knew all about sports. I was interested in statistics. Eventually, I became an accountant. But back then I was keeping score of the games. I was pushing the pencil. So I had a vocation there. So anyway, I did think about it. And occasionally during my life, the thought came up every now and then, what if I had become a priest? And I had some difficulties in my life, and in some cases, I probably said to myself, geez, I would have been better off being a priest instead of being out trying to chase a buck and all that business and what comes with it. So anyway, my father died in 1969. I knocked around. I didn't get married. Well, what happened was my father's death was a eye-opener.
Okay.
It blew me out of the water. I was so sad, I was so real. I came to realize what a great sinner I am.
And your mortality was front and center.
Yeah.
And you had to reflect on
what I didn't do.
What your life was. But, I want to say something, too, that somebody has said to me a lot recently over the last several months. We're working on a project together, that nothing is wasted with God.
Yes.
God uses everything.
Yes.
So, and obviously you're a witness to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to get a visual here too, Jim. You were in high school. You pursued accounting. It sounds like dating some girls in there, having a good time. You had military experience in there, and then you ended up getting married. You said at 34. Fill in the blanks a little bit.
Okay, well, after high school, I wasn't a good student. I played sports in school, but I hardly ever played in the game because my grades weren't good enough. So I mostly sat on the bench, basketball, baseball. I got out of school, knocked around for a year, and then I was going to be drafted, so I joined the Marine Corps right at the end of the Korean War. So I was a peacetime soldier, but I got all the benefits of the Korean War because I got in under the wire. So did my 3 years in the Corps, got out, got into accounting work. The aptitude test was revealing in the Marine Corps. My testing came back that I was meant to be a pencil pusher.
Yeah, okay.
Not a combat soldier, not a mechanic, just a pencil pusher. So I took care of the bookkeeping at the helicopter squad.
You're gifted in math, it sounds
like. I was good in math. So I got out of the service, got a job as a bookkeeper for a couple of companies. One of them was Pan American Airlines.
I remember Pan Am.
Yeah. I was with them when we moved into the Pan Am building in Manhattan. Wow. And so, but I was bored. Now, one thing was, I was a good dancer. I was a very good dancer. And I always met girls because of my dancing. And I'm only 5'8", little guy, but I met a lot of girls. And I had a good life dancing, dating, chasing, romancing the girls. And I wasn't interested in getting married. I just was having fun. Mm-hmm. And then I got it in my head that I needed money, more money than I was making as a bookkeeper. So I said, I'm going to go to Alaska and dig for gold. I'm going to take the easy way out.
That's so amazing.
So I convinced my brother to go with me. But at the last moment, he backed out. I wound up going to Seattle, lived there for 3 years, and had a singles club as well as doing some bookkeeping for a CPA firm. So then my father, that was the mid-'60s.
Okay.
And then my father died in '69. I came back to New York.
Right.
Heartbroken.
Yeah.
Determined to change my life, to find myself a woman and get married. 1 week later, I met a famous bar in New York where it had great food and good fellowship there. And I met the girl who eventually became my wife.
Okay.
However, and let me say this really out loud, boy, we should have had marriage encounter.
Yeah.
I got married. I did not know what I was doing. I didn't even know what was coming down the road. I was so naive. I was so clueless. Oh, I was so the worst guy that could ever get married. And unfortunately, my wife was not that much better than me. However, we got married in 70. We had a baby in 71, 72, 73, 74. And then my wife said, hey, let's stop and think about this. So anyway, here I am hustling for $1, doing my bookkeeping, working for CPA firms mainly.
Were you going to church at that time?
Yeah.
You were involved in the church?
Now,
okay.
65 was Vatican II.
Okay.
Vatican II. And when my father died and I started to think about my faith again and started to look into what Vatican II had to say and decided I wanted to be a good man, get this evil out of my life, get this chasing girls and everything else out of my life, hustling for a buck, maybe sometimes not doing it properly. I changed my life. I became a Eucharistic minister. I became a collector. I became involved with the church, and we moved to my wife's hometown, which was Corning, New York. And so here I am with 4 kids. First 2 were girls, and the last 2 were boys. Busy with the church.
Busy with the church. Let me say, if you're just tuning in, this is Ellen White with FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. And today I'm speaking with Jim Roach, whose inspiring faith journey shows God's grace in action. We are grateful for our show's sponsor, Thales College. So you said, you mentioned that getting married at 34, you got married for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Tell us more about, well, you said that you were a Eucharistic minister, you were going to Mass. What was the general feeling in the home? Just too much going on, 4 young children right away?
Well, we had a big problem. First of all, I married the first girl that came along, so to speak. Attractive, looked great in a miniskirt. What more could a guy want? Her family, outstanding. Her sister is a nun.
Okay.
Her mother and father are the salt of the earth. They are the most wonderful. Both have passed away, of course, by now, but they were. I married the family. I really fell in love with that whole family.
Yeah.
Her uncles were farmers in Pennsylvania. Oh, not all of them were Catholic, but her mother and father were, and she was the youngest of 9. Very impressive. I said, thank you, Jesus. Couldn't have been better.
But you described yourself as you said, 4 years as a jerk. How did this chapter shape the man you are today, Jim?
Well, I got married, and again, so naive, didn't know really how to become a husband.
Right.
Yeah, I became a good father, but I didn't know how to behave as a husband. I didn't know how to honor my wife. I was, in fact, one of the problems was 11 years younger than me.
Okay.
She became almost like one of my children.
Yes.
And here's the biggest problem. She did not go to church. For some reason or another, even today, she's still alive, but I still do not know what happened to make her fall away from church after being raised in such a sisters and one brother and 7 sisters, and all good Catholics, all wonderful. but why wasn't she going to church? I never asked her.
Yeah.
So I went to church alone. I took the kids to Mass. They sat in the first pew while I went up to do the lecturing. At those days, I did the readings. I led the music. I mean, back in 1970, Vatican II, the laity got involved, and I got involved. I even took up the collection. I mean, I did everything.
Yep.
And I did it for 3 different churches in Corning, New York, the 3 different Catholic churches. I got to tell you this story. This is funny. I'm up there. Mass is over. The song we sing before we leave. I get up there, and in those days, there was a pulpit, and you climbed the steps, and you were way above the people, looking down on them. And I started to say, okay, today's closing song is, it might have been How Great Thou Art, because that was one of my favorites. I could pick out my own songs. And there was no organ, no piano or anything. Well, I forgot the melody. So I'm up there looking at the church crowd, and I forgot the melody. I didn't know what to do. And I'm standing looking and looking, and these 2 old ladies, that's sisters, sitting in the front, they caught on, and they started to sing. And it was so funny. I just could not think of the melody of my favorite song. It was so unreal. So I got to tell you that story because it was so funny. Thank you. Those 2 sweet old ladies, oh, thank you.
Helping you out.
Oh, they did.
Okay, so now back to your marriage. You said in 1980 it hit a breaking point.
Well,
walk us through what happened and how you tried to make sense of it spiritually.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what was going on in my wife's head.
Okay.
I thought maybe I promised her a rose garden. You know, all us guys, we propose and, oh, honey, I'll give you this and that. And, I promised her a rose garden. I wasn't delivering. I didn't care about money. We were having a good life. The kids and I sitting in the backyard. I put a deposit on the house. So I wasn't concerned about money. Then, now, here's something that happened in 1972. We had my daughter Mary, March 27th. Well, I think it was around June 10th, we had a horrendous flood that wiped out a lot of towns and it was big. It was, I think, I'm trying to remember what hurricane it was, but we lost the house. It floated down the river. Small SBA came in, and I was able to get housing for the family, and so the flood came, and we had a couple of years of. I had a lot of work to do because businesses had to submit financial statements to get SBA loans so they could start up. So I was doing well financially. But again, that work stopped and back to normal. But again, I wasn't too concerned about money. And then I couldn't figure out why my wife and I weren't getting together. I knew she didn't love me anymore because I didn't treat her properly. I just wasn't. I was a lousy husband. I was a good father. I went to all the sports, did everything, played ball, I was self-employed, so I could spend time with my kids. And that was a problem because I didn't work as much and I didn't make as much money. I got thinking, you know what? I got to make some money. I promised her a rose garden. We were living in a rundown house because I didn't have the money to. I spent SBA money improperly, bought a nice new car with it, and so forth. So anyway, I got involved with a couple of people that I did bookkeeping for, tax work for, they wanted to make money, and we got the idea of starting a restaurant in Corning, New York, which is a big tourist destination because of Corning Glass Works and Steuben Glass. So we started a restaurant. We failed. We failed miserably. I signed for everything personally, so everything I had was taken away. House, car, everything. Had nothing. I was willing to work at a gas station if I could. My bookkeeping, I sort of fell back on that. I didn't go after new business. My income really dropped. We wound up going on assistance. We went to aid, and my wife says, you know what? Go out and get a job, do something. And so I held on to some tax work. So we kind of separated in 1980. Her and the kid, but I lived right downstairs. We lived over a grocery store, her and the kids, and I lived in the grocery store apartment. So I was right there with the kids, but I had no contact with my wife. Then I got the idea. At that time, this was 80, 81, 82. Baseball cards started to perk up, and I took the boys to a baseball card show, and I knew all about baseball, and I knew all about players. I knew all about football and basketball and hockey. So I took some of the money I made during the tax season, and I brought some boxes of sports cards and started to make up team sets and selling them to gift shops. So I got into that at that time. And things were looking up. I knew my business. I knew my history. I knew my sports. I knew my names, everything. So I was somewhat successful, but I wasn't making a lot of money. And I didn't have any expenses except that apartment rent, and I had a $500 car. So I got into that, and I said, let's see, maybe we can reconcile. So we tried it out. Unfortunately, we conceived. We had a baby in 1985.
Not unfortunate for the baby, just unfortunately that it didn't work out.
Yeah. And my wife said, you know what? Having baby, this is not a good idea. So out I went. She says, you know what? I'm going to level with you. I don't want you around anymore. Well, I cried. I stood at the bottom of the steps where the apartment, at the apartment up above the store, crying. My kids said, Dad, take it easy. Go back to your apartment around the corner on the other side of the grocery store. So I wound up, but you know what? I recovered quickly. Thanks to Jesus, thanks going to church, sitting in the back, praying, all those things. You know what? I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to chase a buck anymore. I'm going to love God and I'm going to love my 5 kids as much as I can. I'm just going to forget about my wife. I don't want to have anything to do with any other woman. I am strictly me and Jesus.
You said our Lord took over.
He took over, yeah.
And so you went to Mass, and you were really present in church. You prayed. You stayed focused on your children, and you just day to day kept doing that. Let's talk about the faith lessons. And I in our conversation prior to the interview, Jim, you said, and I love this, miracles with a little M, a small M.
Oh, my goodness.
That you experienced many of them. Share one or two that stand out to you now.
Oh.
At your young 89 years.
Yeah, here I am. Here I am alone, only with the Lord. Chasing after show, traveling. By then, I went to Mass, but I was no longer a lector. I was no longer this or that, a Eucharistic minister. When the business failed, my life sort of came to a stop right then and there. And a few days later, sitting in my little apartment, and having gone to that card show, and I said, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do sports cards. So I started to travel to shows in Philadelphia. I still lived in Corning, New York. Traveled to Philadelphia, to Syracuse, New York, to even out to Indianapolis and other places. So here I am. Some shows were good, some shows were bad. I slept mostly in the car because I didn't have money to get a motel room. Mm-hmm. Showered and shaved at truck stops. Saved a penny at wherever I can. Mm-hmm. Had old cars that required a case of oil in the car to keep the oil up. Just getting by the skin of my teeth. Mm-hmm. So I go to this one show near Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The steel business had gone sour. The people weren't working. Poverty was pretty big back then in 86, 87, 88. I'm at the truck stop Sunday morning. The show is terrible. It's in an old railroad station. Whoever ran the show didn't advertise it. We hardly had anybody come in to buy anything. I don't even think I made a sale. And I was there, I think, Friday and Saturday. And here I am sleeping in the car at the truck stops. Sunday morning I get up, I'm going to go to Mass. Got to find Mass. But where? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the town, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So I head from the truck stop to the old railroad station. And along the way, I see a church, bells ringing, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I see cars going up, and I said, I don't know. For some reason, I went up to the church. It turned out to be a Catholic church. And it turned out to be a church, I think, from the people were all Ukrainians or something like that. It was so I went into Mass, and it was all in a foreign language. But this was here I found a Mass. I got there before the Mass began. The men who ushered, and these were people that were poor. I remember the men having suit jackets on that came up halfway up their arm because they had these suits when they were teenagers and didn't have money to buy a new suit, and yet they had a shirt and tie on, and so I'm at the church and I am overwhelmed by the spirituality at the church, and the priests. We had booklets and I read along in English, but then the homily came. And here it is, 7 o'clock in the morning. These are saints. These are people that, go to the 7 o'clock Mass. They're elderly. Most of them were elderly. He's lacing into them left and right. He is giving a brimstone, whatever you call it.
Fire and brimstone.
Fire and brimstone. He was going up one side and down the other. Man, what a homily. Man, I came out of that church. I got back in my car. I was overwhelmed. I was walking on air.
What an incredible story. Jim's journey of faith is nothing short of inspiring, and the way he carries it forward with courage and humility is incredibly powerful. That's a wrap on part 1 of this special FaithWorks series here on Divine Mercy Radio, where we shine a light on everyday people putting their faith into action. Don't miss part 2, coming your way next Saturday, right after the Divine Mercy Chaplet at 3 p.m. We've got even more insight and inspiration you won't want to miss. And if you missed any part of today's episode or want to dive into past shows, head over to divinemercyradio.org and click on local shows. And remember, FaithWorks goes wherever you go. Just download the free Divine Mercy Radio app, search Divine Mercy Radio NC, and you're set. Until next time, keep living your faith out loud, because faith works.